Hey there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Experience Maker, episode number 24. In fact, we've now been at this for 6 months. I am very excited to see you again. I am a customer experience speaker and coach, and have been doing a lot of stuff like this since we've been stuck at home, and it's been a ton of fun because I get to meet really smart people and talk to them and learn from them and hopefully share some great takeaways for you as well. So today, along those lines, we have a guy that I realized earlier today that I've been following forever. I've read his books. I communicate with him on Twitter and LinkedIn all the time.
Yeah, it's
And
gotten a little creepy, man.
see, and as it turns out, we have never actually met face to face until today. So I'm very happy to welcome a customer experience speaker, consultant, all around expert, and the customer service turnaround expert, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, Micah Solomon. Micah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And this moment is brought to you by my publisher. I have a new book out called Ignore Your Customers and They'll Go Away. Wait, I can never remember the subtitle.
And look
a simple playbook for even better. The color's off.
Yeah,
on one
we
of
haven't even gotten to it yet. But
oh God, I'm so sorry. Dan is also an author. Okay, so Turnaround's Fair Play. Tell us about your book real quick.
No, it's okay. We don't have to talk about my book. But no, you did just publish a book. And actually, there's only one problem with this book, Mike. I'm going to call you out on it in public. And it is that it isn't signed yet. So I'm going to have to get your address, stick it in the mail to you. And I want to get a signed copy because I have a special bookshelf only for signed books. And it's growing and growing. And so I basically am asking for a Micah Solomon autograph. Is that acceptable?
Yes, but much as I'd like to give the post office the back and forth business, I think I can probably spring for one more book.
Either way, if you do, I will put this in the hands of another worthy potential customer. But
thank you.
Anyway,
so much.
We'll get to the book. But tell me, just for those that aren't aware of your background, tell me a little bit about what you've been doing and what exactly is a customer service turnaround expert.
Companies call me if they want to improve their customer service. A nice thing is that often the companies are doing better than they think. So just to pull two examples out of a hat, and these aren't necessarily real examples, but Southwest might call me, but I never expect to get the call from Spirit, because if you're already doing pretty good on the customer experience, pretty well. Sorry, my mom's recovering English teacher. I don't want to say if you're doing pretty well on the customer, if you're already doing it, then you know the value of it and you want to improve it. So companies will often contact me when they feel that something is slipping. And a lot of times what I'll find is that the company has grown. And in the early days, the CEO and their handpicked staff really personalize things for every customer. And then as time went on, they stopped doing that because business development people were doing so well. They thought there was an ongoing flow of customers. But my feeling is that every customer is indispensable. I even try to get people to not think of customers in the plural and think that the only customer that matters is the one who is in front of you right now. So I will mystery shop, and I will talk with people, and I will look at surveys, and I will figure out what's going wrong and how to improve it.
I love that. And I remember that you told us that line when we featured your book on our podcast, Experience This idea of there's really only one customer at a time. And when you think,
and if I remembered you were my customer, I wouldn't use the same line again. I'm so sorry about that, Dan.
No, that's good. I think it's a really good takeaway. And we sometimes forget that as we talk about customers as if it's this vast crowd at a full stadium, and it's just a whole bunch of people. And the reality is each one of our customers is different. They have different needs, a different background. They're from a different part of the world, and I think the more you can personalize thinking about them that way, the better you're going to personalize the experience that they have with you. So I think it's an awesome way to to think about it. Okay, I definitely want to talk about mystery shopping because this is something that I've always been curious about, and I have been a mystery shopper, and it's been
Okay.
fun. But tell me about your mystery shopping.
So it's executive level thing where the CEO or whoever has hired me for the customer service turnaround initiative will get a white paper that is password protected, and I try not to make the password be password. So it's a somewhat confidential document, and I will spend, depending on the situation, I will spend a few days shopping as if I were a customer. And as I get more and more, at least internet famous, you may wonder if they often make me, like they say on Homeland, if they make me. And I think sometimes they do, but my feeling about that is that most people are trying to provide good customer service, and God bless them. If they can't pull it off, they're not going to be able to pull it off for me, even if they know that I'm the shopper. But
Point,
it is really fun, and I work with one of the only triple 5-star hotels in the world. And what a triple 5-star hotel means is that Forbes Travel Guide has rated them 5 stars, really hard to achieve, for lodging, for at least one of the restaurants, and for the spa. So that's what it takes to be a triple 5-star property. So it does get tricky though, and tricky sometimes in funny ways. I know this is like saying you're a male model and saying, "Oh, it's really hard work," and people are like, "Yeah, how's it hard?" So, but it's honestly hard because to mystery shop a spa, let's say I'm getting a facial, and they put the cucumbers over my eyes, or they put something over my eyes so that they could do the facial. And at that point, how am I supposed to see what's going on around me? And how am I supposed to discreetly take notes while I'm getting massaged?
So it sounds like that's very tough work. There is a restaurant chain, not a chain, it's an ownership group in Chicago called Let Us Entertain You, and they
Is
own.
it lettuce like LUTCU?
It is like
okay.
And they own, I don't know, 60 different restaurants, mostly in Chicago. They've got some elsewhere in the country. And they have a very, very sophisticated mystery shopper program that I was part of for a couple of years. This is now 7-8 years ago. And it's kind of like what you were saying is it was interesting because, the benefit was I got to go to fun restaurants and get a free meal and even a free bottle of wine. And, it looked like it wasn't hard work at all. Then you had to come home and complete what was in essence a survey, but like,
oh, you poor guy,
the most complex survey. The first time,
really?
The first time I did it,
you're not supposed to fill it out after you've drunk the bottle of wine. That was my tip.
well, yes. But the first time I did it, it probably took me close to 3 hours. And then I got good at it after a while, and it still took me 45 minutes to an hour. But they wanted to know things like, what exactly did the server say to you when they first arrived at the table? Because they had been trained to say something specific. And then they asked us to look for things like, I never knew this term, but this particular restaurant group has a policy against what's called auctioning food. So when when the server comes back, they're not supposed to say who had the chicken, who had the steak.
Oh, right. Absolutely
know who had, right? Yeah. And so you're supposed to, they ask you, was the food auctioned? Then, how many times was your water filled? I don't know. Like every time I went to drink it, it was full. I know that, but and so what was interesting was it taught me I actually think this was before I ever got into the customer experience world, but it taught me kind of the discipline to pay attention to stuff when you're out and about, that so many people don't have. They just don't, they're not looking for it. And I remember I went to a different restaurant with a friend of mine, and we were talking about customer experience. We were sitting in a booth, and I said, for example, he said, what? I said, did you notice when we sat down at the booth that the wall's dirty? And he turned and he looked, oh my gosh, the wall's dirty. I'm like, yeah, I noticed it as soon as we arrived, right? Like it jumps out and punches me, right? Yeah. And so I think it's interesting. And the last thing I want to say is, I believe, and I'm sure you do too, that one of the best ways to really understand what your customers are going through is to become a customer of your own company, and to the extent that you can. And I almost think of it as like Undercover Boss, but for customers instead of employees, right? Is like, have you actually tried to apply for the credit card that you're getting your customers to apply for, and have you gone through that process and how difficult it is, or whatever it is. So interesting stuff. I want to ask anybody that's watching to please leave questions in the comments, and we will bring them up. And Micah, I'm going to jump to the very first question from one of our biggest fans and a former guest himself, Scotty Werner. Micah, what do you feel is the difference between good customer service and great customer service?
Hey, Scotty. So, well, if you look at what Dan was being asked to judge, he was essentially being asked to judge uniformity, and that can at least get you up to very good customer service. But as far as great, that's an interesting question. So the way I usually think about this is there's satisfactory customer service, and to be satisfactory, you have to have what I'm calling a perfect product. Now, we all know that nobody's perfect, right? But this means designed and tested to work within reasonably foreseeable circumstances. So, which is a somewhat arbitrary statement, but basically your product has to work. The food had to be warm, and so forth. Then it has to be on time, and it has to be provided by a friendly person. So that's satisfactory. The fourth element of satisfactory is a problem resolution process. So this is when the food isn't warm and so forth, how you work with it. So those are the four elements. And if you can do that, that's pretty darn good. If you're serving a perfect product on time in a friendly manner and with a framework for what to do when things go wrong, that's pretty good. But to get to what I would call extraordinary customer service, I would suggest adding the element of anticipation. And this is knowing what Dan wants even before he asks for it. And you can do this using systems. You can do it by literally knowing your customer. But it's very impressive. It gives customers a feeling that why would I go anywhere else? Now, that is kind of my stock answer, but a couple caveats. Sometimes one of these elements is the most important. I mean, if it's a rocket launch, then having the perfect product is probably the most important, right? If it is a 5-star hotel, then the perfect product and the friendly service are both extremely important. In many cases, the timeliness element is the most important. But the two that I find overlooked are, number one, the problem resolution, and number two, the one that I'm saying takes us up to extraordinary, which is the idea of serving unexpressed needs and wishes.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's absolutely right. And it is when you can, I hate the term surprise and delight, because that's not so much, that can be forced. But the whole idea of being
or it can be really scary.
It can be, yes. But the whole idea of being proactive and anticipatory, I think, is awesome. Another one that I might throw out there is that we have a segment on our podcast that's called the required remarkable. And the idea is how do you make the required parts of your business remarkable? Because everybody does the required parts of your business, right? So how can you do it differently? And so I'll give you an example that'll be in season 6 of Experience This, which is starting in the fall. So we went to a restaurant before everything shut down.
Are we in, have you concluded season 5, or is there a cliffhanger coming up?
No, season 5, we go on hiatus over the summer. So season 5 finished in May, and we come back in September. So we went to a restaurant for my son's 14th birthday. He picked it. It's a nice steakhouse. And I booked it on OpenTable and I told them that it was my son's birthday. Now, in almost any restaurant, what generally happens then is when the meal is over, they'll come out with a slice of cake and a candle and maybe they'll sing to you. We walked into the restaurant and the first thing that happened is the maitre d', not even the server, reaches underneath the counter and pulls out a hand-signed birthday card for my son.
No way!
Yeah, I was like, whoa, that was awesome. That was amazing. And then he kind of like said to him, hey, and we got something for you later. And he like winked at him. And I'm thinking, well, it ain't going to be a slice of cake. I'm pretty sure about that. Right. And so I am going to see if I can share my screen here and show you. That's what came out. Hopefully we can see that.
Is it jewelry?
No, it's handmade chocolates that they made on premise. That happy birthday is written in cocoa powder along with the logo of the Fleming's restaurant. And instead of a candle, they used a sparkler, right? Which like, wow. I mean, like everybody's eyes at the table just exploded, right? So it was super cool. And I just loved it because it was it's such a simple idea of taking something regular and ordinary and making it extraordinary. And speaking of birthdays, one of the things we talked about on a past episode was, how many times do you have to share your birthday with different companies for whatever reasons? And then how many times do the companies actually remember your birthday? Right. Think of all the people that you've had to show your license to, or that you've had to fill out your birthday in an application or whatever. And nobody ever does anything with that data. And it's so easy, right? It's just it's like a slam dunk. All right. So I have another question from Tony Amante Shepers. Thank you, Tony, for.
Oh, hey, Tony. How are you doing?
And thank you, Tony.
Hey, Micah, thank you.
Tony was the one that reminded me to post the link because I guess we're having LinkedIn problems. So here's Tony's question. And Tony, man, it looks like we go to the same barber. I like you already. What new criterion, or even just the top one, will customers expect in a COVID world as it relates to F&B and or communication via tech platforms?
Well, F&B and or communication via tech platforms? So those are okay. So F&B is food and beverage. We don't know yet what customers are going to want. I think that's really clear, and we need to really pay attention to what they want. We also, I hope I'm answering the question that you're asking. It's also essential that we do what employees want. I just did this interview with Arne Sorensen, who's the really kind of wonderful CEO of Marriott International. And he said, you have to understand that masks are essential in protecting our employees. But you also should realize that they're essential in making guests feel comfortable, and that the people who think that their God-given rights as Americans are being infringed upon to have to wear a medically necessary mask are going to stop the hospitality industry from ever being able to recover, because the guests who do want the masks are not going to come back until they feel it's safer. So we need to be aware of what makes employees comfortable as well as what is making guests. Now, as far as communication, well, I think in whatever industry, I think the handshake is out. I've never been like a huge handshake guy because, well, let me just tell you, I do some work in patient experience, and the way doctors are taught, they're not taught much about patient experience, but one thing they are taught is come into a meeting, shake your patient's hand. And I'm like, dude, I know where your hand has been. I do not want to shake your hand, but that's what they're taught. Now, I'm sorry it took COVID to end this, but I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of handshakes anymore. So how are we going to communicate? Well, we can start bowing. I mean, that's something we could take from our Japanese friends. If you're talking about messaging, I think that instant messaging is very valuable in the customer experience. And because your question was a little all over the place, Tony, my answer is going to be a little all over the place too. I think that messaging is very powerful because our customers use it in their daily lives, in their personal lives. So if businesses start communicating with them the same way, they feel very comfortable with it.
I think the key there is safety, and it's both
Okay.
for customers and employees. And to me, safety is going to be one of those key words in customer experience for a while now. Because you're absolutely right. If people don't feel safe, they're not going to come to your place of business. And ultimately, yeah, something's going to have to give there on this battle that unfortunately has become a little politicized and hard to understand why. But I think that'll be certainly very interesting. I want to make sure that we get to your book, Micah. Ignore your customers and they'll go away. I love that title. I think it's a hysterical title.
Thank you.
Tell me about it, and because I know this is not your first book, tell me how what were you trying to accomplish with this book that maybe you hadn't before?
Well, Dan, as I think you just realized, writing books is addictive. It's so there's that. But this is my most comprehensive book. I think it's the most up to the minute, and also the chapters are arranged in a way that, or they're laid out in a way that at the end there is a business reading group guide, so that I'm hoping that you will. I mean, I thought it would be physically, but now maybe it'll be over Zoom. I'm hoping that people will have a book group and discuss these ideas together. So that's something that I've done that's new. There's also a diversity and inclusion. There's a couple of diversity and inclusion sections, which I think are very important.
Certainly relevant today.
And this comes from a lot of different industries, technology, hospitality that we've been talking about, retail, banking, and so forth. So I'm hoping that it's very relevant. Now, as far as being up to the minute, I had some concern about whether to use this corded phone. So I asked my son, who's a Gen Z, and I said, will your people even know what this is? And he said, oh, Dad, don't worry about it. We've all seen old movies.
Nice. That's fantastic. Yes. Okay. So I see you took his advice then. So I know there's a ton of great customer experience stories in this book, but any one particular one that you want to share with the audience?
Well, let's talk about wow, about incredible wow stories, which I guess is the surprise and delight. There are several of them in the book. One, which I think is just amazing, is a friend of mine was going to Hong Kong for the first time. He and his wife and his son. Oh, I think I said kid in the book. So his kid in the book. And his kid, obviously now it's a son. Okay, his son had life-threatening food allergies. I think over time he's grown out of it a little bit, but at the time they were life-threatening. The parents have to travel with an EpiPen everywhere they go. So his wife said, well, we're going to Hong Kong. We've never been there before. What's the brand we trust? And they said Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company. So they sent a note to the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company saying that we were coming to Hong Kong. We're going to stay in your hotel, which is the highest hotel in the world, which means that it's at the tip top of a skyscraper in Hong Kong. But they said, it's not that we want your views necessarily, but we want to know what you can do about this situation. And they were floored. The actual executive chef sent them a letter which not only said, we will happily accommodate the situation, but here are the food options we can prepare for your son. And it was amazing. It wasn't all mac and cheese. I mean, nothing against mac and cheese, but it wasn't only mac and cheese. A lot of them were locally authentic and so forth. So that was great. That was great. But then what really amazed them was every day, the cooks would provide them with a thermos full of food that their son could eat as they were traveling around the city so that they felt safe throughout their day. So that is a case of extraordinary wow.
That's amazing.
But I know it's really, really nice. I think it's really special. And that's why the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company gets all this absolutely free publicity. So, but there is everyday wow as well. And everyday wow is what happens on a phone call with Zappos. Don't get too distracted by the 10-hour phone call. I mean, that's almost a stunt, right? Don't get distracted by the 10-hour phone call. Instead, concentrate on the fact that when you talk on the phone with Zappos and your dog's barking, they'll be like, "Oh, what kind of dog do you have?" And, "Oh, great, and yeah, I love that." But or they hear a kid crying, they ask how old, and they bond on that. Or the example that I use in my book of this everyday wow at Zappos is an older woman calls in. She's really not having a good day because she has narrow feet, and she ordered some shoes from Zappos, some very dressy shoes that she wants to wear at her niece's or her granddaughter's wedding, but they're really uncomfortable. And so she calls in, and this woman at the contact center named Madison uh, immediately bonds with her across generations and so forth. She says, "Oh, narrows are the worst. My aunt has narrow feet, and I swear every other phone call we have is about her narrow feet." So then they're best friends forever, and they can get down to the problem solving, which is what narrow shoes might look dressy enough, but also not be a torture fest for the whole day at her niece's wedding. So that is a moment of everyday wow.
Yeah, it's a great example. And as we were talking about before, it's not that hard to get to know your customer on even the most basic level, right? Whether it's their birthday or the fact that they have a dog, and a lot of it as we were talking, being observant and paying attention, because every customer is going to be different. And even the fact that the agent recognized that the person was having a bad day, which you can kind of tell from someone's voice sometimes, and how you react to that can make a huge difference. So I love it. Ignore your customers and they will go away. Available wherever fine books are sold. Correct, Micah?
Wherever, everywhere,
All
everywhere.
right, awesome. Well, thank you, Micah, so much for being here. This is, I like to call this the fastest half an hour on the internet, because every time we hit a half an hour, I can't believe we've already gotten there. But I really appreciate it. Great to finally see you face to face, and best of luck as we hopefully emerge from this pandemic soon and can get back to stages and consulting and all the fun stuff we do.
All right. It was great to spend time with you, Dan.
All right. Thank you, Micah. And
Thank you so much.
next week, we're going to welcome yet another person in the customer experience, customer service world. And we're going to have Sue Duras join us. Sue is the Director of Marketing and Customer Experience for M4 Communications, which is a consulting company, and excited to have Sue there. So thank you so much for joining me again on the Experience actually, that's my podcast. Sorry, on the Experience Maker Show. This is Dan Gingiss, customer experience speaker and coach. You can find me at dangingiss.com or on Twitter at dgingiss. Thanks a lot. Have a terrific weekend, and we'll see you next Thursday and every Thursday on the Experience Maker Show.